Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, and today we're going to be talking about miracles, a really exciting subject, and how you can use miracles to facilitate natural healing. Now, if you want to find out more about me and my work, please visit catherinecarrigan.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter to get more great information about how you can heal yourself naturally. Today, our guest is Brent Michael Phillips. Brent is the author of a fabulous series of books, The Formula for Miracles, where science reveals the secrets of spirits. And there's 3 volumes here that have been published. Brent is also the creator of Awakening Dynamic System, which consists of advanced consciousness technologies for subconscious clearing, instant healing, manifestation, sensing energy and auras, and the ascension of consciousness from awakening to enlightenment. You can find out more about his work at awakeningdynamics.com. Welcome, Brent Michael Phillips.
Oh, this is great. I'm so excited to be here.
Now, I love talking about miracles. And, you know, those of us who have read the Course in Miracles have sort of an idea of what we think a miracle is. But for our audience, how would you describe what is a miracle?
Simple. A miracle is any phenomena which our current level of science and technology cannot explain.
Well, that would describe a lot of what actually happens in natural healing.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, how did that happen? I don't know, but it did. Or you and I would know, but maybe doctors wouldn't be able to explain it. Now, what exactly is the formula for miracles?
Well, that's a great question. And really, I would say it's what I have dedicated my life to is to going out and studying the great teachers and prophets and gurus and mystics, things like the Course in Miracles, and figuring out what it is they're actually trying to tell us. And so the formula for miracles is really a set of very simple insights and tools that everybody can learn to use very easily and quickly to make enormous positive change in their life day to day. As one example, learning to do a healing process. I can, with just about 2 hours of training, I can teach people how to do healings from a theta brain state. And we usually, even if they've never done it before, we always see miracles happen in the group. I've never had a group in 15 years that we didn't see miracles happen on the first day. It is very easy to do. And how do I do this? Well, I am very much the unlikely healer. My background is in science and engineering. And when I experienced my first miracle, I was like, wow, I don't know what just happened here, but I was fascinated because I was shown that magic is real. And I had to go figure it out. So here we are.
Here we are. Now, Brent, you and I have something in common in that we're both smarty pants.
Yeah, I used to be really smart a long time ago. Absolutely.
I used to think of myself, but I was Phi Beta Kappa at Brown. You were Phi Beta Kappa at MIT. Why do you think that really smart people are drawn to natural healing and end up in natural healing eventually?
It's simple. It's truth. And so most very smart people love truth. We love learning. We love discovering. We love seeing how this universe we woke up in works. And so I think anyone that's interested in truth, for the sake of truth, will eventually be drawn to natural healing. Because the conventional medicine has its place. Unlike some healers, I'm not completely against it. I just think that it's kind of like a doctor has one tool in his box, a hammer, and he's trying to use his hammer to not only drive in nails, but also cut boards. And that just doesn't work very well. And so the engineer in me goes, hey, there's got to be a better way. And, there's got to be a better way to cut this board than banging on it with a hammer for 2 years until it breaks. And that's kind of how I got into this stuff, because this was never my plan. I am absolutely the world's most unlikely healer. As they say, with this kind of vocation in life, it's not something you choose, it kind of chooses you. And that's absolutely what happened to me.
Yeah. Now, going back to the formula for healings, for formula for miracles, is this like the law of attraction from The Secret?
Sort of. I would say that the secret and the law of attraction are a very high level and oversimplified presentation of what's going on. And some of the basic teachings of the law of attraction are absolutely correct. That what we focus on expands in our life, that consciousness has power, and the way we put our attention on things makes a difference in what happens in life. The trouble is that it's so oversimplified and so commercialized that it doesn't work for most people. And I went through a terrible period of my life in my 20s when I was in grad school at MIT working on my PhD as one of the world's leading internet experts when the internet boom hit. And so I left grad school to form a website company, did a lot of high profile websites, including the Sony PlayStation, Nissan Motors, Disneyland, and other Fortune 500 companies, and ended up working myself literally almost to death. Because I figured, well, heck, I'll work hard for a couple of years, sell my company for millions of dollars, and then retire to some tropical island. Well, instead, I ended up with devastating repetitive stress injuries that were so bad that I had to move in with my parents. I couldn't even drive my car because some days it was too painful to hold the steering wheel. And after years and years of failed treatments, the doctors gave up on me. And when I was 27, I got put on permanent disability. They just told me my life was over. And so one of my reactions to that was I had a friend get me into positive thinking. And nowadays we call it the law of attraction. Back in the 90s, we called it positive thinking. It's all the same stuff. And I went through the whole law of attraction stuff, all the stuff they talk about in The Secret. I went to positive thinking weekends and I joined mastermind groups and I go jump on the stage and high five everyone and shout out that I was a millionaire and conquering life. And I put a vision board on my wall up and I put power words on my walls. And I said my mantras exactly 108 times every single day religiously because I really believed that the positive thinking would turn my life around. But you know what? It didn't. It didn't help at all. It made me feel a little better, but I was really frustrated and disappointed. And after about 6 months of being Mr. Gung Ho positive thinking, I really turned and got very angry and bitter, and I threw it all away. And it wasn't until years later I had had a surgery that left my right arm completely frozen at the elbow. I couldn't move it at all. And long story short, 4 months of failed treatments later, I went to see a healer. And in the first session, my elbow went pop and instantly and permanently healed. And so I was like, whoa, right? What's going on here, right? And I then embarked on about 10 years of study and research to figure out what was going on. Here's what I found. The basic teachings of the law of attraction are correct, but the technology they offer you for using that is ineffective for most people. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to cover all of them here, but I'll offer one that's very simple. It's the subconscious mind. And so what they found is, and there's actually been scientific research on the law of attraction, believe it or not. What they found is about 1% of people feel they get good results from the law of attraction. And why is that? Well, about 1% of us are naturally clear of subconscious blocks. So if you have no subconscious blocks in the way, you can go jump on the stage and high five your friends and make a vision board and say your mantras, and things will show up in your life. It can work like magic. But the other 99% of us go, what's going on, right? I'm sure we've all seen the the sales letters and the testimonial videos of all the happy, shiny people. Oh, I went to this weekend program and I made $800 million overnight, right? Those things happen, but they're very rare. That's what they don't tell you. My goal with the Formula for Miracles was to create a system that is highly functional for everybody. That's not, well, let's try this and hope it works. Because that's how a lot of people operate. And it's true, even whether you're looking at natural health or energy healing, law of attraction, there's many people out there that just go, well, let's try this and see if it works. That's not a formula, right? That's just, let's try it and hope it works.
Yeah.
That's speculation.
Yeah. I want to just say that when I'm doing my work, will set a goal, whether it's to heal my elbow or to overcome my blocks to making money. And then I identify the emotion or emotions that are holding you back. And then I go through all your blocks. I identify all the subconscious or conscious blocks, all the ages that these patterns started,
Mhm.
all the other relevant information. I identify where you have payoffs. A lot of people have secondary gains by
Sure.
staying sick. And you have, it's my experience, you've got to identify all the blocks and clear it out all at the same time in order to manifest this miracle. Now, I want to go back to your series of books, The Formula for Miracles, where science reveals the secrets of spirit. How do these books differ from A Course in Miracles that's been around for some time?
Well, really, I'm the first to admit that I had no particular talent for healing or intuition or anything like that. And if you look around, there's a lot of great healers out there. There really are. But most of them have a natural talent. Most of them don't really know what they're doing or how it works. They were just born that way. I was not. I had zero natural talent for any of this. What I did have was a world-class education and the mind of a scientist and an engineer. And so what I did was I spent 10 years of research going to the gurus and the masters and the teachers and the healers and the prophets and the mystics. And I spent an enormous amount of money working with them. And I reverse engineered what they were doing. And so my talent, even though I have had tremendous success as a healer, I'm very proud that late last year I passed the 1,500 miracle mark. So over 1,500 legitimate, what I call medical miracles. Because to me, if someone goes, "Oh, I like the energy," no, that doesn't count. For me to notch that, it's got to be something that shows up on medical scans and confounds doctors. So I know I'm onto something. And so my talent is very simple. I can learn these really complicated, esoteric, dense things like the Course in Miracles and figure out what it is it's actually telling us and relate that to people in a way that everybody can understand. I mean, when I learned to do healings, it took me a 3-day seminar and all sorts of visualizations and chants and mantras and a lot of new age mumbo jumbo. And 3 days, I learned to do a healing process. I've eliminated all the garbage. For me, it takes me 1 to 2 hours to teach people that. And so I've done with healing and energy and the law of attraction exactly what they taught me to do at MIT. You find what's out there, you look at the best of the best, you take them apart, figure out how it works, and build something better. Pretty simple. Because I don't want people to be confounded by how dense or difficult this stuff is. It really can be so easy. With me, it took me 5 years of full-time effort to finally achieve the rank of master healer. For my students, it takes anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months. It's simple. I've streamlined the process, made it easier so everybody can do it.
Now, how is it, Brent, that our computers can lead us to better understand energy healing and higher consciousness?
Okay, great question. And so it's, as anyone who's been around the spiritual world knows, there are no coincidences. Everything has a meaning. Everything has a purpose. And computer technology has come to us at this point in history. It's not a coincidence. It's intimately involved with our spiritual development. One of the purposes of the computer is to act as a mirror for our own lives. And that sounds crazy, but it's so powerful because most of us, the way we're trained to live our lives is totally backwards. There's an old blonde joke from the 90s you may have heard. They used to say, how do you know if a blonde has been using your computer? Well, your monitor is going to be covered with whiteout and black marker. And so that joke leads us to an incredible insight. That drawing on the monitor, that's what most doctors do, isn't it? They're not getting to the core of the problem. They're just painting on the monitor to cover up the symptoms, to make it look like the body's working. We all know that if your software isn't working, drawing on the monitor is not going to fix it, is it? You have to change the code. You have to get to the core, the real source of it, which is on the inside. And so that's how our computers can teach us about life. And so we look at our computers, you got all these different programs, right? You got a web browser, you got email, you got Skype, whatever, right? Our lives are the same. Our body is the hardware, and the subconscious mind, what I call the software of the soul, is the software. And all of us have a program for every area of life. You have a program for how much money you make. You have a program for your physical health, your emotional health, your relationships, your intuition, your purpose. You name it, you got a program for it. And just like someone drawing on their monitor, that's how we've been trained to live our lives. And so if you're struggling with money, we all tend to think, oh, I just need to get more money. That'll solve the problem. No, it won't solve the problem. That's drawing on the monitor, right? You haven't actually fixed the problem. You just temporarily suppress the symptom. And so that's why we struggle, why we suffer so much. We were trained to live in a way that just doesn't work. And so how can we do better? Well, it's simple. If you want to change how your programs run, you need to fix the code, right? If you want to make more money, if you want to be happier, if you want to be healthier, find love, find your purpose, that's just a simple matter of changing the code you're running. And at its core, the formula for miracles is some simple techniques that people can use to help identify and change that code. Just like you said, if there's something going on physically, there's always an emotional spiritual core. You just got to trace it back, find where the code is on the inside in that software of the soul that's facilitating a disease, an injury, pain, whatever it may be. You change the code and the program runs correctly. And it's really that simple.
Yeah, and so many of our programs don't even start with us. They start with what was the programming from your family, or what's
Sure. Most of it is genetic.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what is it, what does your culture believe about that?
Yeah. But most of our belief systems that control and shape our lives have nothing to do with us. They're things we inherited from our ancestors. There's things we picked up from the collective consciousness. And so, it leads us to a lot of problems. One being that most of us don't know exactly who or what we are, and we don't actually know what we want in life. We've just been sold a bill of goods by advertising agencies. And when you can start to see through all that, then you can find the truth. And really, that's one of my passions, is to discover and share the truth. Because I see so many people running around at the effect of simple misunderstandings.
Now, Brent, what do you believe is the biggest obstacle holding people back from experiencing better, more fulfilling lives?
Well, it's really simple. We all have a choice in life. And here's your choice. Do you want to have a better life? Or do you prefer to be right about what you think you know? Choose carefully. You can't have both. And so many of us are so convinced it's so important to us to be right about things we think we know. We suffer tremendously. Some of it is religious, some of it is familial, some of it is cultural. I mean, I have friends who are extremely educated, smart, professional people with successful careers and families who are adamantly opposed to any kind of natural healing. And most of them are sick and on 8 or 9 different prescription drugs. What's going on there? It's not a matter of being smart. It's a matter of people like that are very attached to what they think they know. They really want to believe that conventional medicine is the only thing that works. But that's why I say you have a choice. You can either be right about what you think you know, or you can have a better life.
And
take your pick.
Here at the Natural Healing Show, what we do is we empower people to help heal themselves naturally without drugs or surgery wherever possible. My father's a doctor, my uncle was a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor, and my brother's a doctor, and I'm a medical intuitive healer. So, when we look at the fact that the leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50 is now drug overdose.
Wow.
Then you have to ask yourself, is taking another drug really going to solve your problem? Is taking another drug going to really solve our societal problems? So it's really important that we turn to these natural healings. Now, Brent, what advice would you give to someone who is truly desperate for a breakthrough, but has already wasted too much time and money on things that don't work?
Yeah, I know what that feels like. That was my life for a long time. What I would offer is this. Number one, if you give up, you won't make the breakthrough. Giving up is retreating to victim consciousness, and that's not going to work. That never works. Instead, we need to be open to outcome and surrender how it happens. You need to believe that you can make the breakthrough, even if you have no idea how it can happen. And that also leads us right back to we have to let go of what we think we know. If you're totally convinced that your case is hopeless, guess what? That's what you're going to create. One of my favorite quotes is from Henry Ford, who said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right."
I'm always telling my clients the largest cult in the world is difficult. And
Yes.
whenever I have a client who's been to countless doctors, which describes a lot of my clients, one of the things that I will do with them is I will do a healing with them to be willing to get better
Mm-hmm.
and identify all the blocks. Again, physical, is there a physical block to you getting better? And it's my experience, you may have pain, you may have suffering, but more than likely your block on getting better is not in the physical level. It's going to be energetic, emotional, mental, or spiritual. Or I find there's 25 different payoffs that people can get for staying sick, fat, and unhealthy. So you've got to really look at, are you participating in the cult of difficult? And what are these blocks that Brent is talking about? Now, Brent, why is it that you say that there is no real spirituality to be found in most energy healing and law of attraction programs?
Good question. And I hope some of the listeners just woke up and said, "What?" Because I'm going to stand against the crowd here. And what I realized, I had been a full-time healer for 10 years before I finally understood that there was nothing actually spiritual about working with energy. Now, there's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful, right? Just like there's nothing inherently spiritual about driving your car, but it's a great way to get around town. And so I want to offer everyone a distinction between metaphysics and spirituality. They're both important, they're both useful. Metaphysics is a technology. It's learning how to use energy to achieve effects. It is engineering. And so we can learn to use energy to heal our bodies through energy healing. We can learn to manifest and bring things into our lives. We can learn to rewrite the software of the soul to change how our life unfolds, whether it's to be healthier, to make money, to find love, purpose, you name it. We can develop intuition. But here's the challenge we run into. Over 99%, almost every single person in this industry of energy healing, natural health, law of attraction, whatever you want to call it, is completely missing the spirituality. Some of them are very good at the metaphysics, but the spirituality is the question of, well, what are you? What is this you that has a body, that has a mind, that has a bank account, a family? And so that is the spiritual question. And no amount of manipulating energy from ego will ever solve that. And so I like to think of the metaphysics as an important training ground for higher consciousness. It's going to be a challenge to achieve higher consciousness if you're stressed out of your mind about money, if you're in incredible pain, if you have severe disability. It makes it much harder. And so the metaphysics is a wonderful way to learn to make shifts for yourself and others, but it is a foundation for the ascension of consciousness. It's a foundation for real spirituality. And you had mentioned the Course in Miracles, and I think it's so interesting that my experience has been that all of the great teachings of all our religions are all telling us the same thing. The problem is it's so convoluted, it's so difficult to decipher that most people never get it. And so, but they're all actually teaching us the same spiritual message. And so the more advanced levels of what I teach are really about spirituality and the ascension of consciousness. I want to show people what's often called the foot in the door to enlightenment, the beginning of the end of suffering. And that is a purely spiritual angle, what's called the awakening process. And the beautiful thing is many of us here, and I know that many of the people watching and listening today have unknowingly created problems and challenges in their lives to lead them to wake up. Because when I've had my first major dark night of the soul back in the 90s, I went literally in 2 years, I went from being one of the world's internet experts coming out of MIT at the beginning of the internet boom, poised to make millions of dollars, be retired by 30, to 2 years later, being in terrible chronic pain, being put on permanent disability, and told by doctors there was no chance I could ever recover. And so that didn't happen. That wasn't a coincidence. I had to be broken down. I want to tie together some of the things we talked about here. I had to be made so desperate I was willing to let go of what I thought I knew. I thought I was so smart, so rational. I thought that energy healing was for dummies and people that couldn't afford real doctors. I couldn't have been more wrong. But ultimately, it led me on this spiritual path. And for the first 10 years I was doing it, I thought it was all about the metaphysics, which, by the way, I'm very good at, right? I'm a technologist. That's what I do. But I now see that was just another foundation for awakening, for the purely spiritual study. That ultimately is what takes us all the way to enlightenment. And that's why we're here.
So, Brent, I want to follow up with two questions. So,
Mm-hmm.
just realize there are two questions that I'm going to ask. The first is that, like you, since I have been a healer for 24 years, I have gone back and studied physics to try and have a better understanding of what I'm actually doing when I'm doing healing work and what I'm actually doing by using energy. And so the first question is, what are the principles of physics that you feel most apply to natural healing?
Well, it's actually very simple, and in my three volume book, the Where Science Meets Spirit, I reveal this. It's a little too much to get into right now. It takes me about an hour to explain. So I teach that in my live weekends and the Secrets to Higher Dimensional Living Intensive. But it comes down to its basic quantum mechanics. And it's funny that you studied healing and then went back and learned the physics. I did just the opposite. I learned all the physics first, and then I went and learned healing. And a lot of people ask me, hey, Brent, how is it that a skeptic, an engineer, a scientist experienced a miracle? It was simple. When I first heard about this healer I went to, uh, I looked at the material and I said, oh, this sounds like a bunch of New Age bunk. But I had enough understanding of physics. I said, okay, it might work. And so it was my understanding of physics that sort of created that little crack that allowed the miracles to start to slip in.
Well, one thing, and again, I'm not a physicist, so I'm probably going to completely bungle this, but my understanding of the Heisenberg principle is that your intention collapses the wave function.
That's exactly, yes.
Yeah.
That everything exists in a state of flux, of possibility, until attention and awareness interacts with it, in which case it picks a certain outcome. And so I know that, for anyone that's not into science, that sounds very confusing. Let me make it simple. What we're dealing with are higher dimensional effects and energies. There is much more to our universe than what we can see with our eyes. One of the science facts that blew my mind when I heard this was if we took the whole wavelength of light, all the different kinds of light, from the tiniest gamma rays to the longest radio waves, and we said, okay, this whole spectrum of every kind of light in the universe is 2,000 miles long. Do you know how much of that 2,000 miles the human eye sees? Less than 1 inch. So our bodies can tune into less than 1 inch of a 2,000 mile spectrum. And so there is so much more in the universe than human biology can perceive.
Yeah,
And so there are higher dimensions all around us everywhere.
only 4% of the known universe can be quantified or measured, and it's
Sure. The rest is dark matter and dark energy, which is just a fancy way of saying we have no idea what it is, right?
yeah, no. So here's my follow-up question. So many of us who do natural healing have sort of a routine for self-care. Just like if you were an Olympic athlete, you might eat a certain way and exercise a certain way. So for myself, for example, I begin and end every day with prayer and meditation.
Hmm.
So how have learning spiritual principles changed your life, and what is it that you do for self-care to stay connected to your spiritual self and to higher consciousness?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm going to offer an answer that may surprise you. There was a period in my life where I was very regimented in terms of the metaphysical practices. I was doing yoga, I was meditating, doing Pilates, running around to all the seminars, and that's great stuff. There's nothing wrong with it. But at a certain point, you realize that none of that is actually necessary. You're welcome to use it if it helps you, right? That's great. Just like I like to watch sports. Other people don't. That's okay. You don't need to watch sports to be entertained. It works for some people, but not others. At a certain point in the spiritual journey, you'll find that it doesn't really matter, and you can sort of tune in intuitively to what you need. And so I don't have any longer a formal regimen of meditation. I do special movement exercises, which I have found it's really one of the most advanced levels of what I offer, uh, to learn how to be in relationship to your own body. And to me, and a special form of meditation that allows you to not only lower the brain waves, but to synchronize them, which is really, really key. I've never found any other system that you can actually prove that it synchronizes brain waves. These are the things I use, but I don't have any regimented system because I just know when I need to use them.
That's a great answer. I know when I studied medical intuition, one of the most important things that I learned was a very simple technique that basically allows you to get your ego out of the way, where you intentionally connect every part of your being up to God and the universal consciousness. Because when you're completely dialed in, tapped on, then you know whatever it is that you need to know to be
Hmm.
of service. Now, Brent, what exactly is higher dimensional living?
Well, it's pretty simple. It's learning how to access this power and ability that we all have, but have no idea is there for us. And so, instant healing is simply a phenomena of higher dimensional energy. Intuition is simply a phenomena of higher dimensional energy. And by learning to use these things, we can see a powerful change in our lives. And let's face it, the world's in a lot of trouble. If we keep living the way we have, it's game over for humanity. We will destroy this planet's ability to support higher life. And so it's not a coincidence that we've been given these tools and techniques. I want to show people how to do subconscious block clearings. With the technology I've developed, it takes me less than 10 milliseconds. When I teach people, it does take them maybe about 5 seconds at first. So you can learn to clear blocks in seconds. You can do instant healings in seconds. Space clearing, open your intuition, manifest. This is all very easy to do with the right technology. And all it's doing is harnessing the higher dimensions. The good news is, it doesn't require any fancy protocols or years of learning anymore. That's what it was when I learned it. And so I like to say it's, again, very much like a computer. That 40 years ago, there really wasn't a commercial software market. If you wanted a program that did something, you either had to write it yourself or hire an expert to do it for you. That's the way energy healing was when I came to the world. It was very complicated. Nowadays, if you want a program, you just download it, right? And seconds later, you're running it. That's sort of what I've tried to do with energy healing, to make it really easy. I've learned how to literally, I can download the code to be a healer right into someone's subconscious. That's why I can train a healer in a few hours.
Yeah, and
instead of 3 days.
I fully support what you're saying. I remember when I was studying medical intuition, one of the things we talked about as the vibration of the planet speeds up, then our natural healing methodologies need to keep pace with that.
Absolutely.
And some of the things that used to work 10 years ago, they're not they're not in current vibration. So,
Right.
for example, when I use flower essences, my favorite flower essences are actually being made like right now. I love orchid flower essences, and there's a gentleman in Scotland, and he's making vibrational remedies for what's going on right now. Now, Brent, what is the secret to discovering one's life purpose?
It's simple. Everyone wants to know, what is my purpose? Here's the answer. When you understand exactly what the me is that has the purpose will be obvious. So everyone's been asking the wrong question. Everyone's been running around, maybe not everyone, I'm overgeneralizing, almost everyone. We run around thinking we know what we are, asking, what is my purpose? Backwards. The right way to find it is to ask, what am I? When that is clearing your mind, the purpose is obvious. And that is really the essence of awakening. That is the spiritual piece. And so as long as you leave the I intact, all one can do is learn to manipulate energy from ego. That's not wrong. When I'm hungry and I eat food, that's manipulating food from ego, and that's not wrong. It's great. But there's so much more. And so when you know what you are, which can only be discovered through the awakening process, you will laugh, guaranteed. Because your purpose will be crystal clear. Even questions like fate or free will become obvious.
Now, Brent, what is awakening, and how does awakening differ from enlightenment?
Well, awakening is simply knowing exactly what you are. What is this awareness that you think sits in your head, that has thoughts, that has feelings, that has experiences? What exactly is that? Most of us have no idea. I used to think I was really smart, knew all this stuff, big education, big brain, all that. I had no idea what I was, and it ruined my life. Once you know what you are, awakening is the foot in the door to enlightenment. It is the beginning of the end of suffering. After that, the last step left on the journey of consciousness is the embodiment of that truth. That enlightenment is nothing more than fully embodied awakening. And one of the unfortunate aspects of our current society is we're so mental, we're so in our heads. There's a lot of places you can go to get good spiritual information. But as long as it just sits as a new fact lodged in your mind, it has very little power. We have to live in the truth of these things. That's what embodiment is. I like to say embodiment is like orange juice. I can talk to you for hours about what orange juice tastes like, but you have no idea, do you? You have to take a sip. That's what I want to do for people. I want to give them a sip of that higher consciousness. I want you to experience it for yourself. In fact, every month I do heal-a-thon events where I do advanced exercises to bring people into higher consciousness. And at first, it can only be a temporary effect, but I want everyone to experience this for themselves. Many people start to see energy and aura with their open eyes. They'll see faces change. They'll see past lives show up. You may even watch the whole room disappear. It's pretty wild. And again, this is all done with the open eyes. It's not a visualization. It's you interacting physically with your environment. When you raise your consciousness enough, the whole world around you starts to change. You realize it wasn't actually there in the way you thought. But back to awakening, the key to get there is to ask what you are. I used to think I knew what I was. I was some kind of soul or spirit being that was playing human. That's actually not correct. That's a very common New Age teaching. Wrong. What we are is something much grander, something much more beautiful.
So I have to follow up and say, Brent Michael Phillips, who are you, or what are you?
Great question. If I was able to wake people up in 5 minutes or an hour, I would absolutely do so right here, right now. It is like learning a language. That awakening is, if you wanted to learn Japanese, I can't just bang you with a magic stick and have you all domo arigato, right? You have to study, you have to practice, you have to embody it. Awakening is like that too. I'll give a hint right now, which is that the truth of you is not any kind of being. That's probably the most powerful hint I can give that will make sense to people. So ask yourself, what do I think I am? And then ask, is that some kind of being?
Now,
If it's a being, keep working. You're not there quite yet.
so this is fascinating, and I know that those of us who are in the audience are going to want to know more about your books. So the Formula for Miracles, where science reveals the secrets of spirit, has 3 volumes.
Yes.
How would you describe the difference between the 3 books? Because I know you've published all 3 volumes
Sure.
last year.
It's pretty simple. Volume 1 is the introduction, the background of the foundation. So you learn the essentials of how energy works, the nature of the subconscious mind, how to communicate with the subconscious mind, and the process by which subconscious clearing works. Book 2 is all about the science. Book 2 lays out all the details of the step-by-step explanation of miracles, law of attraction, energy healing in terms of the underlying physics. And book 3 is really application. It's like, okay, now that I know this stuff, how do I use it? How do I get in and change the code inside of me? How do I apply these tools of higher dimensional living to improve my health, to make more money, to develop intuition, to find purpose, even to move towards enlightenment?
Now, will you share for our audience some of the spiritual experiences that you have had?
Sure. I'll share quickly 1 or 2 that I've had, and then a couple from my students, because I want to emphasize that what I'm offering is not some talent or ability that this guy has. So the power is in the system, right? There's no natural talent required. And just like there's no natural talent required to use gravity, is there? Right? You throw something in the air, it comes back down. This works the same way. The one of the coolest ones I had was when I was learning to see energy. My teacher took me out. It was midnight, and we went out on a canopied forest path. In other words, there were dense trees overhead, and it was so dark you literally couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And he said, Brent, you need to just follow my energy trail. And so he walked through the absolute darkness, and I could see a white mist, and I just followed his energy. There was one time where I thought I lost him, and I heard him say, Brent, stop. Turn to your right. Okay, take 3 steps back. Now continue. And I did. And we got to the end about 20 minutes later. And I said, why'd you tell me to stop? He goes, oh, you were about to walk off a cliff. So that was one of them that I thought was pretty cool. And so you can learn to see in the dark. People and things have auras and energy that do not require light to be bounced off them to see. It goes right into the mind if you know how to tune to it. Another one that I'm very proud of is my last level 1 training. I had one of my students come through. He was actually doing the whole thing online. And after he did the weekend training, he went to the hospital where his mother was told she had 2 weeks to live with stage 4 cancer. Mm. And he applied the simple healing process he learned from me. And she went into complete remission and was discharged 3 days later.
Oh, what a beautiful story.
Yes. And so I have to say, of course, that's not typical. Not everyone has that experience. But this really happened. And it's important to me that people know that this wasn't me. This was someone that had just had a little bit of training from me. That when you learn how to access those higher dimensions, when you learn the right technology, you can do incredible things. Incredible things.
This is very, very inspiring. So, Brent Michael Phillips, any final thoughts for our audience?
Well, I am a big fan of the work of Rumi, and one of the things Rumi said was that without a guide, a journey of 3 weeks will take 100 years. And having looked at so much advanced spiritual material, I have to say it's not going to be 100 years, it's going to be thousands. And I've devoted my life to make it easy for people. I want to make it really easy. with just a little bit of training, I can show everyone how to develop the skills of a master healer in a matter of weeks. It's not minutes, it's not hours, it is weeks. You need about, 3 days of training with me and some work on your own and practice, and you will absolutely start to see miracles happen. I want to show people how to do this. I want to help them wake up, to see the truth, to know what they are, to discover the secrets to the end of suffering. Because right now we're in the place where we need this stuff to fix our individual lives. But that's just the beginning. This is the warm-up. We're going to have to learn this stuff and come together as a group to change the direction of our society, of the world. And it can only happen one person at a time. And it is, it is like learning a language. It does take some time to build that skill. And so the time is now, right? If you want to speak Japanese, don't wait. It's going to take time. In a year or two, you'll be glad you did. So I want to show people how to be fluent in the higher dimensions, in the advanced techniques of spirituality. We don't have 30 years anymore to go and meditate. We need this now. And I'm giving away the first 2 volumes of my book. Anyone that wants to hop onto my website at awakeningdynamics.com. I think your audience in particular would love my list. I send out natural health articles all the time. All the time. That's most of what I send out. And about every month, I do a Healathon webinar where everybody can come and I will demonstrate some of these techniques of higher consciousness, do a question and answer session, as well as do healings in anyone that requests one. And anyone that comes and register for the webinar, which is totally free, will get volume 2 of my book. Volume 3 of my book, I give to you if you purchase any of my materials, or you can go buy it on Amazon Kindle. So, I want to make it really easy. I want people to experience this, and don't believe it just because I said it. Come see for yourself.
You've been listening to Brent Michael Phillips of awakeningdynamics.com. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, for the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. Find out more about my work as a medical intuitive healer at catherinecarrigan.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter at catherinecarrigan.com so that you can learn even more about natural healing. And as we conclude, remember that miracles are natural. I saw a great quote this morning from Wayne Dyer. He said, "I'm realistic. I believe in miracles." Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.